Brides in the hills too. Gutty had not yet reached the top of Sitha Hill. The wind started and the song started saying ho. The bell rang and flashed, and at first there was the sound of a few drops falling on the wooden leaf. Quickly grabbed the blanket that was on the shoulders. As I was taking it off and putting it on, the monsoon rain began to pour down like a forest. Why was it so bad for those who crossed the skin of its eyes? Cursing the rain, he wrapped the blanket tightly around his body and walked slowly in the dark. As Gutty climbed down the Sitha Hill and neared the ditch that formed the northern border of Lakanda's paddy field at its foot, he heard the rush of the stream. Ata. The henna of this ditch must wait for another time, he muttered. When he came to the edge of the pit and looked, he saw nothing but darkness. As he stood imagining the rise of the pit due to the rush of water, it flashed once. The stream, which was flowing at a higher speed than the Turanga army rushing to attack the enemy, and the screens of the stream were flashing, and the pieces of wood and garbage that were moving fast in the midst of it were witness to its rush. Gutty stood looking into the darkness, listening to the rain and the brook and the wind rustling in the trees as he tried to remove and throw away the small icicles on his feet. In a short time, in the distance beyond the pit, in the thickets of Lakanda's paddy field, the lanterns were seen waving repeatedly. I felt that the rain had stopped, thinking, doesn't this Malay fish come out, Papa? Is it too much for the kids? But it was not supposed to be crossed until the ditch came down. As he was bored standing, he made good use of a part of the blanket was coming very close to his spread. And sat down on a mound of green-grown soil, waiting for the front of the pit. The rain had stopped completely. The volume of the stream was not what it used to be. The croaking of frogs, which had not been heard before, could be heard in a picture-like and artificial way in the roar of the rain streams. As if the wind was blowing, the drops of the tree were falling. Gutty, who was sitting staring at the creek without thinking about it, moved and listened to the cry of the creek, as if he had joined it, suddenly woke up, blew his nose, sniffed and gasped for air. His nose smelled like a dog. The smell of the whining of a country dog steaming from the rain. Gutty looked around and saw nothing, but the smell was clear. The smell of a dog was as real as if it had been seen by the eyes. Did you find a way out of the boat? He said. Bahulia ba, sweetly called, Bahulia ba, as if it was due to the earnestness he had in his senses. Summoned or not, as if by magic, his monstrous country dog leapt up like an arrow, standing close by and wagging its tail. The kunya snarled and squirmed. To see the huge body of the tiger, which had melted into a dark dog, flashed in the light of the lightning, the little boy caressed his wet head with his hand and said, "Tell me not to come, but you have beaten me and left me, but have you come back? I will live for a dog. I am a dog. If you go, keep barking until you are a dog." Thoi. Bad front and mouth. The tiger did not even come close to it, even though it was pressed by Neki. Go away. Gutty too was bored and wanted company, so he did not want it to go away either. The nickname, Negutty, was derived from the dasa of the tiger. No matter where he went, the dog would not leave him. If it was tied up in the tent, the crow would come and take the bell, otherwise it would find a way to excrement and follow the owner. If Gutty was beaten with a stone and kept back, he pretended to return to the camp and got stuck somewhere, and then stole and followed. Well, then, in the villages he went to, the dog barked in the houses. Thus Gutty and his dog got a bond in the minds of people and they called him Negutty, and the dog as Guttinai. That name came into use to such an extent that if someone mentions Gutty's name and says, "Who? Is it a dog?" the question inevitably came. The tiger, the name given to the dog by Gutty, was still a nameless cub roaming the streets of Megara Valley when Gutty picked it up and brought it up. For that, he was putting porridge in his stomach, but that puppy grew up and he found a dog that was short and growing tall, and raised it a little more. The dog also learned self-reliance and grew into a giant. Seeing its size, its courage and its fur, he named it Tiger. Although some people saw its color and instructed to name it as Karia, Gutty justified the name by giving due respect to Guna. The tiger, which was up to Gutty's waist, was not afraid of dogs or leopards. Once when Arulu was sleeping, he sent everything to a leopard that tried to carry him away. Gutty used to tell that story and other stories related to it to those who heard it many times. Even though it was boring, he did not get bored. Both the manamana cells of the dog and the wolf embraced each other, so when the tiger came, although it was pushed back while leaving, it was happy instead of angry. After about half an hour, the pit came down fairly. Gutty picked up the tip of the cap and the waist punch in the dark and started crossing. The tiger also followed. When it came to Naduhala, even if the circus was performed on the toes, it was not successful. Some parts of the body got soaked against Gutty's wishes. He was very angry and disgusted with the stream, and before him he joined the far bank and waited for his masters. Brides in the Hills 3 continues.